Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
17 minutes. That is how long the call lasted. 17 minutes on February 23rd at 10:47 p.m. when FBI Director Kash Patel dialed a number from his personal cell phone, not his government line, not his secure FBI phone, his personal cell. The number he called was registered to Kasowitz Benson Torres, a law firm in New York City, and that law firm represents one client who matters in this story, Donald Trump. 48 hours after that 17-minute conversation ended, 47 documents related to Jeffrey Epstein were reclassified, documents that had already been reviewed by career FBI agents, documents that had been cleared by Department of Justice attorneys, documents that classification specialists had approved for public release under Freedom of Information Act requests. 47 documents that the American people were about to see until they were not. Until someone decided 2 days after a late-night phone call to Trump's lawyers that those documents were suddenly too dangerous to release. 3 minutes. That is how long it took Senator John Kennedy to connect those dots in a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing and watch Kash Patel's carefully constructed defenses collapse in real time. 3 minutes to ask the questions that Patel could not answer. 3 minutes to expose a timeline that looks exactly like what everyone suspects it is, a cover-up. Not a complicated cover-up involving encrypted messages and destroyed evidence. A simple cover-up. Phone call, reclassification, silence. Watch this video until the end, because what Senator Kennedy revealed was not just suspicious timing, it was a documented sequence of events that Patel sat through under oath without denying. And when Kennedy asked the final question, the question that would have ended all speculation if Patel had simply said no, the FBI director refused to answer. That refusal told America everything it needed to know. If you are following the Epstein files story, if you want to understand why 2,300 documents are still hidden while only 90 have been released, subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because what happened in that hearing room was not political theater, it was the exposure of a pattern, and the pattern leads directly to the question nobody in power wants to answer: what is in those files that is worth protecting? September 16, 2025, Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room. For 90 minutes the session had been exactly what Washington hearings usually are: boring, predictable, senators asking prepared questions, FBI Director Kash Patel giving prepared answers, budget allocations, cybersecurity protocols, personnel evaluations, the kind of procedural monotony that makes C-SPAN viewers check their phones. Patel looked comfortable. He had handled hostile questioning before. He knew how to deploy bureaucratic language that sounds substantive while committing to nothing. He checked his watch twice during those 90 minutes, not nervously, casually, like a man who thought he had already survived the hard part. That was his first mistake, because John Kennedy was waiting, and Kennedy does not rush. The Louisiana Republican, Yale law graduate, Oxford scholar sat through the procedural filler with the patience of someone who knows exactly when to strike. At precisely 3:47 p.m. Eastern Time, Kennedy leaned toward his microphone and said the name that changed the atmosphere in the chamber: Director Patel, I want to talk to you about Jeffrey Epstein. The shift was immediate. Reporters stopped typing. Staffers looked up, because everyone in that room understood that Epstein is not a budget discussion. Epstein is not a policy debate. Epstein is the case that symbolizes elite corruption and unanswered questions. Patel's expression did not change. He had been asked about Epstein before. He had his talking points ready. Senator, as I have stated in previous testimony, the FBI conducted a comprehensive investigation into Mr. Epstein's activities. Kennedy cut him off before the rehearsed paragraph could breathe. I am not interested in your previous testimony. His voice was calm, polite, with steel underneath. I am interested in what you are not telling us. That was the pivot. The moment the hearing stopped being routine and became surgical, Kennedy was not debating procedure. He was challenging concealment. Patel blinked. Kennedy rested his hand on a blue folder, thick enough to signal preparation, not improvisation. Director Patel, how many documents related to Jeffrey Epstein are currently held by the FBI? Numbers force specificity. Specificity restricts maneuvering room. Patel knew that once a number entered the record, it would anchor everything that followed. That is a difficult number to quantify, Senator. The investigation generated substantial material. Kennedy did not budge. I did not ask for an essay. I asked for a number. Patel glanced at his attorneys seated behind him, both in dark suits, both aware that the subject had shifted from oversight to exposure. Without reviewing our internal database, I could not provide an accurate figure. You are the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Kennedy leaned forward slightly. And you are telling me you do not know roughly how many Epstein files you are sitting on. The phrase "you are sitting on" landed hard because it implied possession, and possession implies responsibility. Let me give you some context. Kennedy referenced a Freedom of Information Act request his office had filed 6 months earlier. Approximately 2,300 documents related to the Epstein investigation are currently being withheld by the FBI. Does that number sound about right? 5 seconds of silence. Accusatory silence. That figure is within the general range. Patel finally admitted. Within the general range meant yes, everyone knew it. Out of those 2,300 documents, how many have been released to the public? Patel tried to shield the answer with process language, redaction protocols, privacy protections. Kennedy's patience was measured and finite. I did not ask about procedures. I asked how many. Approximately 90 documents have been released in redacted form. 90 out of 2,300. Kennedy let the disparity linger. That is roughly 4%, Director Patel. What is in the other 96% that the American people are not allowed to see? Patel deployed the familiar defense. Sensitive information, ongoing investigations, national security considerations, privacy interests, the language of institutional caution used for decades to justify secrecy. Kennedy did not attack those pillars directly. He removed the ground beneath them. Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. The investigation is closed. So what ongoing investigation are you protecting? Patel shifted in his seat. First time he had moved. Small movement, revealing discomfort. There are ancillary matters that remain under review. Ancillary matters. Kennedy repeated the phrase with a thin smile. If the principal subjects are either deceased or incarcerated, what exactly are these ancillary matters? And more importantly, who are they protecting? The question was not rhetorical. Protection implies beneficiaries. Beneficiaries imply power. Patel defaulted to procedural constraint. I cannot discuss specific operational details in an open setting. Kennedy nodded, as if anticipating the wall. Fair enough. Then let me ask you a different question. Since you became FBI director, how many Epstein-related documents have been reclassified from public to restricted status? I am not aware of any systematic reclassification. Kennedy reached into the blue folder and withdrew a document dated February 8th of that year, 2 months after Patel took office, marked for official use only. He read from the memo. Materials previously cleared for potential FOIA release have been redesignated as law enforcement sensitive and removed from the release queue. 47 documents were listed. Why, Director Patel? Were those 47 documents buried again? Patel attempted to frame the decision as evolving methodology and updated risk assessments. Kennedy was no longer operating at the surface level. Did anyone outside the FBI ask you to reclassify those documents? The room held its breath. This was no longer about numbers, it was about influence. Did anyone from the White House communicate with you about the Epstein files? Standard interagency coordination occurs on various matters. Kennedy pressed harder. Did anyone from Donald Trump's legal team contact you about those files? Patel's expression shifted through visible calculation. My decisions were based solely on national security and law enforcement interests, not external pressure. That was not yes, that was not no. Kennedy would not let the ambiguity stand. Have you communicated directly or indirectly with anyone connected to Donald Trump regarding the handling, classification or release of Epstein-related documents? I would need to review my communications logs to provide a complete answer. Kennedy's eyebrows rose. Epstein is not a routine topic that fades into background memory. The implication that the director could not recall such communication landed as implausible. Then came the escalation. Kennedy stood up, something rarely seen in these proceedings. He held up a phone log dated February 23 at 10:47 p.m., a call placed from Patel's personal cell phone to a New York law firm, Kasowitz Benson Torres. Do you know who that firm represents, Director Patel? I speak with many attorneys in the course of my duties. That firm represents Donald Trump. Kennedy's voice was quiet now, deadly quiet, and according to this log, you spoke with someone there for 17 minutes, 3 weeks after taking office, 2 days before those 47 documents were reclassified. He paused. Let that sink in. Now one more time. Did anyone connected to Donald Trump ask you to bury the Epstein files? The silence was existential, because at that moment the issue was no longer document counts, it was loyalty versus obligation. Senator, that call concerned a separate matter. Kennedy cut him off with a metaphor. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it is probably not a chicken. You reclassified documents that were about to expose powerful people. You did so after speaking with Trump's lawyers, and now you ask us to accept that it is coincidence. Do I look like I was born yesterday? Patel asserted he resented the implication that he would compromise his integrity. Kennedy did not frame it as implication, he framed it as sequence. You spoke to Trump's lawyers. Documents were reclassified. You refused to provide a clear answer. Those are facts, and the American people can draw their own conclusions. Then Kennedy asked the final question, the one that mattered. Are there documents in the Epstein files that directly implicate Donald Trump in criminal activity? Senator, I cannot comment on classified materials in an open setting. I am not asking for content. Kennedy clarified, only for existence. Do such documents exist? Yes or no? Patel declined to answer. Kennedy turned toward the camera, not toward Patel, toward America. The director of the FBI just refused to deny that evidence exists connecting Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities. He could have said no. He did not. 3 minutes. That was all it took to convert a routine hearing into a national referendum, because Kennedy did not make accusations. He presented a timeline. February 8th, Patel becomes FBI director. February 23rd, 10:47 p.m., 17-minute call to Trump's law firm. February 25th, 47 documents reclassified. 3 dates, 1 sequence, 0 denials. The hearing continued for another hour. Other senators returned to routine questions, but it no longer mattered, because the timeline was now public record, and the refusal to deny was now under oath. What Kennedy accomplished was not theatrical outrage, it was structural exposure. He did not need to prove that Trump ordered the files buried. He established that Patel called Trump's lawyers, that documents were then reclassified, and that Patel would not deny implicating material exists. That sequence lives beyond the hearing room. It cannot be walked back. It cannot be explained away. It is documented. Within hours the clip had escaped the chamber and entered the national conversation, not because Kennedy shouted, because he asked questions that demanded yes or no answers and got silence instead. Cable news played the exchange on a loop. Social media exploded with the 17-minute phone call detail. Legal experts debated whether Patel's refusal constituted strategic avoidance or necessary protocol, but the core facts remained unchanged. 2,300 documents withheld, 90 released, 47 reclassified after leadership review, 17-minute call at 10:47 p.m., refusal to deny the existence of implicating material. That is not speculation, that is sequence. The power of sequence lies in its cumulative weight. Any single element might be explained away, but together they form a structure that demands explanation. Patel's defenders argued that classification decisions often change as leadership reassesses risk, that directors routinely consult outside counsel, plausible in isolation, but plausibility erodes when the timeline tightens around a politically sensitive case. Kennedy understood that erosion is incremental. He leaned into it without exaggeration, because exaggeration would undermine credibility. He never claimed Trump ordered the burial. He asked whether anyone connected to Trump requested reclassification. When the answer avoided clarity, he let the avoidance speak. In congressional oversight, the most damaging testimony is often the testimony that does not arrive. Absence creates narrative vacuum. Vacuum is filled by inference. Patel's expression during the exchange became a subject of analysis. When Kennedy produced the phone log and specified the law firm, there was visible tightening of posture, momentary shifts suggesting recalibration. That recalibration signaled calculation, and calculation under oath invites suspicion. 17 minutes is long enough to discuss substantive matters, long enough to coordinate strategy, long enough to exchange assurances, short enough to remain deniable without transcript. Patel did not deny the call, did not contest its duration, which means the factual spine of Kennedy's argument stands uncontested. The refusal to deny the existence of documents implicating Trump carries distinct rhetorical weight. Denial would have closed a door immediately. A clear no would have neutralized speculation, but by declining to answer, Patel left the door ajar, and ajar doors are where political storms form. Kennedy's concluding decision to look directly into the camera signaled awareness that the hearing had shifted from intra-committee exchange to national referendum. By addressing viewers at home, he bypassed institutional filters and invited the public to evaluate the refusal independently. The hearing transcript now includes a refusal to answer whether documents implicating Trump exist. That refusal will surface in future hearings as leverage. Congressional oversight is cumulative. Kennedy hinted at further inquiry. That hint is not idle rhetoric. Once narrative of concealment takes hold, follow-up becomes politically inevitable. 3 minutes reshape perception, not through dramatic confession, through documented sequence and strategic silence. Patel may argue prudence requires silence, but prudence in congressional oversight can resemble evasion when not accompanied by alternative transparency. 17 minutes with Trump's lawyers. 47 documents disappeared 2 days later, 2,300 documents still hidden, and one question nobody in the Trump administration will answer: what is in those files that is worth protecting? The cover-up is not theory, it is timeline, and timelines do not lie.